If you're watching on your computer, make sure you can get us on your local cable provider. Go to youtooamerica.com and enter your zip code to find out where you can find us locally. I'm Rick Amato, filling in for my good friend Dr. Gina tonight. Welcome back to America Trends. Hearsay and rumor. The media has been reporting that Joe Paterno knew about Jerry Sandusky's child molestations as far back as 1976, but they never offered any evidence to back up those headlines. And now, the story has been proven false. Here to discuss the shameless display by the media is syndicated radio talk show host, documentary filmmaker of the movie Framing Paterno, John Ziegler. John, a friend of mine, joins us from Los Angeles. John, welcome to the show.
Rick, always good to talk to you.
John, you've been talking about this for a couple of years now with the movie Framing Paterno. Tell our viewers exactly, this is amazing. This story came out in the last 6 days that Paterno knew headlines and innuendo, but there were never any facts to back it up, that he knew as far back as 1976 about molestation allegations. And it's all been a bunch of junk.
Well, as you mentioned, Rick, I've been following this story for about 5 years, almost 5 years since it began, and I've never seen a worse case of media malpractice in my life. As you know, I once made a movie called Media Malpractice,
right.
How Obama got elected, about the 2008 presidential election, and I thought I would never see anything nearly that bad. But this has been far worse for a lot of reasons, which I'd be happy to explain. But I have to tell you, what we've seen in the last week has been the worst of all of this media malpractice, because here's what happened. You know, the media jumped on this narrative that somehow Joe Paterno was either enabling or culpable or somehow even covered up for Jerry Sandusky within 3 or 4 days of this story breaking back in 2011. Well, let me tell you something. What we thought we knew at the time when Joe Paterno was fired unfairly by Penn State in November of 2011, all of it has turned out to be at best suspect, if not completely and totally false. But the media bought a narrative. And once they buy into a narrative, Rick, you know, whether
right.
it's about Barack Obama or any other public figure, if they put all their chips down, they're going to protect that to the death. And what happened last week was one line in a filing by a judge that had nothing to do with any finding of truth or fact in this case. Absolutely nothing. It had to do with whether or not Penn State was going to be reimbursed for the money that they paid out to Sandusky's alleged victims by the insurance company. One line, the judge happened to reference one allegation, completely unproven, unvetted, unvalidated by anybody, that one of the accusers who got a settlement from Penn State, when I know these settlements were not vetted, I know this for a fact from my own personal experience and my own investigation with information that's an absolute blockbuster that I cannot reveal at this time, but I can assure you I know what I'm talking about here. These unvetted accusations, but in one line of a legal filing happened to mention that there was a 1976 accuser that said that they told Joe Paterno about their abuse by Jerry Sandusky. That was it. And within literally a couple of hours, every single major news media outlet had run the headline without even looking at what the judge actually wrote or having any clue about the context of it, that there was now evidence or finding of fact, or that it was an actual fact, that Joe Paterno had known about Jerry Sandusky's sexual abuse since 1976. That is not just a falsehood. It is an absolute slanderous lie. And the news media didn't even bother to check it. And then, of course, once that lie gets out in the headlines, a couple of days later, Penn State says, whoa, wait a minute. By the way, against their own self-interest, because Penn State's been very, very PC about this story since day one, which is part of the reason why the truth has gotten lost in this case. Against their self-interest, they say, wait a minute. These settlements were not based in fact. We just wanted the story to go away. We didn't find whether or not these allegations were actually true. We just spent $90 million of other people's money, state money, to make this story go away as far as a PR nightmare. And then the prosecutors actually came out a couple days later saying, hold on a second, these other allegations involving assistant coaches that are also being alleged by the news media with no verification. There's no evidence to back that up either, and these are not credible claims.
Let me ask you, John, what about the Paterno family themselves? Might there be a case for slander here in a lawsuit?
I hope so. I mean, I know there's so many lawsuits in this case because of all the truth being lost. But let me tell you what really happened,
Yeah.
okay? Because there's an alternative explanation for this, okay? People are probably wondering, well, so how in the world would this get into a legal filing? Here's what really happened, Rick. When Joe Paterno was unfairly fired, it was very clear to the whole world that Penn State was going to be paying up to $100 million to accusers of Jerry Sandusky. Well, look, in the world in which we live, people are going to come out of the woodwork. Look what's happened with Prince after his death, all the people claiming to be Prince's children.
Yeah.
So the reality is, here's what happened. In order to get a settlement, you needed to be within the statute of limitations. You needed to be part of the second mile charity of Jerry Sandusky's, and you had to have some connection to Penn State. Well, if you're somebody whose age indicates that your allegation is back in the 70s, guess what? You got two major problems. You were outside of the statute of limitations, and the charity didn't begin until 1977. So you're out of luck unless you come up with a news hook, a hook to Penn State. And there's no better hook to Penn State than to claim, laughably, with no evidence, in a way that's completely uncredible, that somehow you told Joe Paterno about your abuse. All of a sudden, cha-ching!
Wow.
You have a settlement. That's what really happened here in the news media. It's so stupid they don't see it.
John Ziegler, you have exposed that so clearly and cleanly for our viewing audience. I appreciate that. Let me ask you this. What about that goofball reporter who made this story in the first place? As you said, everyone jumped on later because they buy into the narrative. That's what the media does. But what about the reporter that broke this in the first place? Is there a hidden agenda here, do you suppose?
Well, Rick, one of the major problems with the news media in this day and age is that there's no accountability, especially if a story goes viral. If a story goes viral, it doesn't matter if it's true or not, because as long as it's popular, it's inherently good. There will be no accountability. So this story is a winner for the people who lied about it. That's the bizarre world in which we live now, Rick, because it's all about clicks. It's all about ratings. And if it got retweeted several thousand times and got viewed by a ton of people, it doesn't matter that it was false. The reporting on this from day one has had a huge agenda because this story was too complex for the media morons of today. We live in a world now where we have 15-second attention spans at best. We live in a Twitter world where if it's more than 140 characters, it can't be the truth. I'm telling you, everything about this case, everything is upside down.
And on that, John, I got to buy into the limited time narrative. John Ziegler, thank you for joining us and opening our viewers' eyes. Visit his website, framingpaterno.com. Stick around. More America Trends coming up.